Good day, everyone, and welcome to the WANA webinar series. As you will notice, all participants have been muted. If you have a question to ask, please send your questions into the Q&A panel located on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the three-dot option along the bottom and selecting the Q&A panel. Your questions will be answered after the presentation. If you have any technical issues, please send a private chat to the host, the directions of which you can find in the chat window. Thank you again for joining, and please welcome Dr. Ashwin Vasan, President of Fountain House.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Ashwin Vasan. I'm the CEO of Fountain House in New York City, and it's a real pleasure for me to be here for this WANA webinar series event on virtual clubhouses. We're all undergoing an unprecedented challenge in the form of coronavirus, and I understand that we've all pivoted and built virtual and digital presences to keep our community together first and foremost, to get us through this pandemic and to emerge on the other side with the community intact. And so I just want to first congratulate all of you for being able to do that with such nimbleness and flexibility in your own ways, and to really do the work of keeping your community together. What we've learned at Fountain House in the building of virtual clubhouse in partnership with Clubhouse International is that real investment and thought behind a virtual platform can have long-lasting benefits for people who benefit from clubhouses in the physical world. Not only does it offer up new opportunities to engage existing members, it allows us to reconnect with members who we might have lost over time. We're seeing that in our early experience at the virtual clubhouse. It allows us to reach into communities that we have historically had a harder time connecting with. For example, younger people who might be more digitally native, and people with limited mobility who might find it hard, or living long distances away from a clubhouse, who might find it hard to actually get into a clubhouse program. And finally, what I think is so amazing and powerful about this opportunity to build virtual technologies is that if we can get this right, and if we can get this right in a way that not only has common themes for all of us, but that allows each of us to retain our own individual communities, we could build a platform that all of us could connect to, where we all have clubhouses without walls, where people can connect across countries, across cultures, across needs, and really form a global community of people who live with mental illness and benefit from clubhouse services. So I think the potential is enormous. At Fountain House, we are really making a decided investment into building and improving the virtual clubhouse, not just for the benefit of the people who come to our clubhouses in New York, but for the entire clubhouse community. I hope you'll join us in this effort. I hope you'll help us design it. I hope you'll help us improve it. And ultimately, I hope you'll find it valuable enough to where you want to participate in it and you want to form that global community together. Because all I know is that we are so much more powerful in changing the reality of mental health for the people we serve, families and communities alike, when we work together and when we're speaking as one. And so I thank you and have a great webinar. I can't wait to hear more about all the exciting lessons you've learned in these early days and weeks. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and pass it over to Lee.
Thank you for that. Welcome to today's webinar. I want to begin by sharing with you that I've personally, during the last few weeks, found it so inspiring to see clubhouses all over the world, both remaining open and supporting their members despite their buildings being closed, but also doing things differently. Today, we're going to hear from two different clubhouses about how they are developing a new type of clubhouse to take advantage of all that they've learned during lockdown Now, the first Clubhouse we're going to is Mosaic Clubhouse in London, where we'll hear from Chris Thomas, who is the Chief Executive, and also from Jamille Malcolm, who is one of our young members. He's participated enormously during this whole lockdown period and has initiated some really exciting things which he will move ahead once the building reopens. I'd like to introduce you first of all to Chris Thomas, CEO of Mosaic Clubhouse.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you may be joining the seminar from. I'm delighted to be joining you and telling you about things that we're doing here in London. As you can see, as you will see, those of us that are speaking from Mosaic today are all in different places. That's because we're not yet back at our clubhouse. Our plan is that, first of all, our evening crisis service, the Evening Sanctuary, will reopen on the 1st of July, or a week or so after that, with our main daytime services following around July 22nd, all being well. What we've done so far is conduct a detailed risk assessment and asked each unit to look very carefully at working out the detail of how we can safely return. The issue is that we can't go back to having our usual daily attendance of 70 to 80 people in the clubhouse. We can only really accommodate about 20. So that means that we're clear from the start, we're going to have to operate a clubhouse in parallel. We're going to carry on with our virtual clubhouse, using all the digital technologies that we've all embraced, and have to have the real clubhouse, if you like, the building-based clubhouse, operating in parallel at the same time. There's so much that we've learned, and so we're already picking up, having sort of dipped into some of these webinars over the last few weeks, that there's so much that we've learned. There's so much we've learned at Mosaic, and there's so much that the whole Clubhouse community around the world have learned, and things that we don't want to lose. But there's also been some challenges, and those challenges are things that won't go away either. So what do we want to keep? What we found is that online meetings, online unit meetings in particular, have reached a different cohort of members, and many members have described it to us as a lifeline. Through being in lockdown, being isolated in their own accommodation, having the chance to check in and see faces, see familiar faces, and talk to people that they know through the clubhouse has been a lifeline. Last month, we held our first online board meeting. I was absolutely terrified about doing this. Our board chair, Lucy, was also terrified about doing this. We didn't have a clue how it was going to go. What we found was that the level of engagement from members was like nothing we'd ever seen. We held it through Zoom, and using the chat function, the level of interaction we got from the almost 20 members that turned up was tremendous, and it's like nothing we'd ever seen. We definitely want to include that in future board meetings wherever they may be held, giving people the chance to take part, and using the technology to do that where we didn't do that before. We've also had successful policy meetings, and again through the chat functions of video meetings, been able to engage people much more freely, and have been able to reach consensus in a much more straightforward way, because everyone can chip in and everyone can be heard, and it's also quite efficient on people's time as well. It's been very, very good. As far as challenges go, the biggest challenge has been in developing the virtual clubhouse, knowing that it's excluding some members. We've had to go out of our way to find partnerships with community organisations that help people to get more engaged with the digital world. We've got members that don't have internet access at home. They don't have a laptop, don't have a smartphone. And those individuals are the ones that we're most concerned about. And those are the ones that, for whom I want to reopen our clubhouse for as soon as possible, really, even though obviously we can't exclude people that turn up on the door, but it's those individuals, some of whom we've had to write to, send postcards to, as well as doing the daily reach out and phone calls. And that's been the second challenge as well, that running the virtual clubhouse is no substitute for the good old-fashioned clubhouse staple of reach out. When we first went into lockdown, communicate was the mantra for staff, and we've been developing relationships, as I'm hearing from all around the world, with members in a whole new way through doing that. We've got to keep doing that. So what about the potential for the future? We're thinking that maintaining this hybrid Clubhouse system means that we can do softer introductions to activities. If members might feel a bit overwhelmed about the idea of coming into a busy Clubhouse like ours, having some introduction through online meetings could be a really good way to get them used to what's going on and engage them physically later on. And we also see the potential for engaging members who are unable or unwilling to come through other reasons. We've just started a whole new hospital inReach project a few months ago, trying to get people that are currently in hospital interested in the potential of becoming a Clubhouse member when they leave. But if they're unable to leave the hospital, perhaps with the assistance of our sort of staff and members that visit, can get engaged in the Clubhouse while they're still there, which feels very exciting. We've also been able to extend recovery-focused services to people in the wider community. So it's not opening up to people that aren't just our members. We did a lot of work preparing to close down and doing even more work preparing to reopen. And there's been other people engaged with other services that perhaps haven't had the benefit of some of that planning, and we've been able to engage with them. We don't want to lose that either. We want to recognise that this is helping us cement our place in our community and can offer more services to more people. The other thing it's done, of course, is increase the digital skill set of our members. Lots of people having to learn very fast about how to use the technology that's perhaps been there for a while, but not used it, and are now using things like having Zoom meetings with their own friends privately, but they wouldn't have thought of doing that, and helping them to engage with that technology to reduce their own isolation during this incredibly difficult time. It's also led us to think about how do we measure things differently. The Clubhouses are building-based projects, and we tend to traditionally measure what we do, engage what we do, by numbers of people that come in the door, attendances. But there needs to be different ways we're finding now. There needs to be different ways that we're having to record engagement with Clubhouse activity, which isn't just based on physically visiting the building. And that's something that we're going to have to be carrying on with as well. But what about the impact on our members? How's it felt for them? And what about the future? And I think on that point, I'll hand over to Jamille and just ask, I mean, how has the lockdown affected you, Jamille, and what are you looking forward to when we reopen?
Thank you very much, Chris. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone. Hope everyone's okay. I'm just going to tell you about my experience of lockdown through Mosaic. First of all, the changes of the my routine, and it's basically with the Zoom meeting, and basically the Zoom unit meetings have helped me by having a structure to the Clubhouse structure of my daily routine, and has also seen other members as well who I won't see as well, and also I have set up a online radio station which is on Spreaker.com. This was a setup basically for community and community and entertainment, where Mosaic members can request some songs in the shows. I think this is very important because people who love music, they can generally engage with their music taste they like. Also, it's for all ages as well, so it's not a audience based, its audience is all ages. And it's basically what I'm planning to do once we get out of lockdown is set up something in the Clubhouse, because we've got a podcast room and we can do some podcasts for the station and make it bigger. So what I want to try and do is get in contact with community newspapers like the Brixton Bugle, and we can try and make it a community radio station, not only online but for everyone only on and Mosaic members as well can help me. And what I'm trying to say is this is not my own only project. This is everyone's project. And yeah, and so coming from doing shows in my room to doing shows for the community, and it's really helped me focus on what I do like doing as well. And basically, Mosaic Clubhouse has changed my life, made me confident, and that's what I want to try and bring back to the community as well. And that's what I'm planning to do, and I'm happy to work with all the members of Mosaic in making it big, and for a community radio station as well. So yeah, I find the virtual stuff very in bringing my confidence up, really routine wise, and I'm hoping to make Pixel FM part of Mosaic. And yeah, so it's basically a community radio station. It's online on Spreaker.com. It's on Mosaic Facebook. It's on Mosaic website, and that's what I'm planning to make Pixel FM part of Mosaic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamille. Thank you, Chris. So some really exciting ideas there for moving back into the building and reaching into the community. We're going to hear next from a really exciting Clubhouse which has already opened and is already folding together its work ordered day together with its virtual Clubhouse. We're going to move to the Academy at Glengarry, which is in Florida, where we'll hear from William McKeever, who's the director, together with his colleagues, Idanes Paredes and Ian Churchill. Let's go to the Academy.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate the introduction. And as you'll notice, we're on site at our Clubhouse community. I have a mask on. I'm glad to be with you all today. If you could see me, I'm smiling. It's just nice to be here with you all today. And we'd like to share a little bit about what we've been doing the last really 3 weeks to plan for this and to make our opening happening. I'd like to thank Clubhouse International and a shout out to Lisa Kessler. So curiously enough, we were supposed to go to training at Fountain House last month, and obviously that was postponed. So we're hoping that we'll be able to attend on site, and it won't be a virtual training when we eventually go to Fountain House. So we're on site, and we'd like to explain a little bit about what we did to make this happen. So the state of Florida started its reopening phase 1 a little over 3 weeks ago. And since we want to be in the mainstream of society, we began our discussion about reopening our Clubhouse community 3 weeks ago. And it took us about 10 days to come to consensus on our guidelines. And that was not an easy process. The consensual process, people have strong feelings about the virus, about safety, about precaution. So we began that conversation through Zoom meetings, through virtual house meetings. And after 10 days, we came up with our guidelines. In retrospect, that was a really important process because when we opened, which was 10 days ago, everyone knew what our guidelines would be. And if they decided to come on site, they knew what to expect and how they could participate. So I think that was a really important part of the process. We reopened 10 days ago. We have our normal Clubhouse program. So we decided on a straight 40-hour work ordered week, Monday through Friday, our regular hours, 8 to 4. So members have the option of either attending on site or virtually. It's not mutually exclusive. So someone can attend on site today and virtually tomorrow. So, you know, we're figuring this out as we go along. It's certainly been a process. We're reevaluating day to day as we figure this out. But by and large, it's been quite a smooth reopening, I think, because we came to consensus on those guidelines ahead of time. So I'd like to start with a very short video. It's really raw footage taken last Friday by our multimedia team. And what you're going to see, so I want to ask everybody to really pay attention. It starts with a wellness walk, and you'll see the social distancing. And then you'll see some unit teams, team meetings. We use a smart board. Each of our teams has a smart board, which is an interactive screen, 80-inch. So we can do our task board as well as see the members that are accessing virtually. So please take a look at those smart boards. You'll also see our culinary team. So culinary is operating normally we serve a hot lunch every day. You'll also see our dining room with people seated physically distant. So I think it'll give you a nice visual, including, I think, a culinary demo. So if we could bring up the video, that would be great. Let's take a look. Okay, wonderful. What we'd like to do next, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. So next to me, I have Idanes Paredes. Idanes is our young adult coordinator, and she heads up our business and tech team. She's been with us a little over a year. She attended training at Genesis Club. So glad to have you, Idanes. And we have Ian Churchill. Ian's a member in our business and tech team. He's also part of the other units as well. He participates all across the clubhouse. Ian's been with us about 2 years. Does a great job, really a member leader, also attended training at Genesis. So I'd like to pass it over to you all to kind of explain the nuts and bolts of our virtual and on-site hybrid clubhouse.
Thank you. So if everybody can see the PowerPoint. So the first thing that we did at our clubhouse was analyze the capacity. So we created 20 workspaces respecting the social distancing guidelines. And we have 3 units here. So that includes the culinary team, business technology, and arts and communication unit. The guidelines are each member sanitizes their workstation during the work time. We have all used computers that are marked. So as you can see in the photo, we have a sign in between each computer, just making sure that we always have a 6 feet distance. And we actually decided not to schedule members to attend because our average daily attendance before the COVID-19 was 20. So we don't need to do that, but we are growing, so we might need to do that in the future.
Yeah, so as you can see, safety is at the forefront of what we do at our clubhouse, and it's actually me to the right, and I am going through my screening that all members, staff, anyone who enters the building has to go through this procedure, and basically consists of a simple temperature check and COVID screening questions that all members have to pass through. And after that, masks are required, and it's highly encouraged for you to sanitize your hands as well. So going into our clubhouse, we use basically 2 platforms or apps, one of them being Slack, which is basically just an app that's used for communication. It is a closed chat, but basically we use it for communicating and also getting our tasks within our workspace in our units, getting those tasks done. However, we also use Zoom, which you may already know, but Zoom is a video conferencing app that allows meetings to be done efficiently and effectively as well. To your right-hand side, you'll see a hybrid work order day schedule, and what this is our arts unit provides a schedule so that members kind of get a sense of like how their day is going to be going to meetings, and it basically just creates more structure for the members as well. We also do telephone outreach by engaging the members by calling them up, seeing where they are, letting them know any kind of updates related not just related to COVID-19, but and any updates we may have. Also, in addition to our hybrid services for our members, we have an 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. We call it our open Zoom concierge service. And what that means is basically there's a staff, one of our staff in our boardroom, and between those hours, the staff has a designated live feed for members just to be able to interact or to if they have any questions, to be able to reach the staff or work on any kind of one-on-one projects. So we have that available as well. And yeah.
So with those programs, we created an integrated work order day. We do morning unit, meeting unit through Zoom. And as you can see in the photo, we have staff and members on site. And on our smart board in the back, we have members at home. And we have shared our screen so they can see exactly what people on site can see. So as you can see here, the clubs over our smart board. There's Ian signing up for tasks. We have separated the daily tasks, indicating which tasks are on site and which tasks are home, so that way they know what to sign up for. So they can see in real time when we are signing up for different tasks. We have an open Zoom meeting in our business and tech team throughout the day, and this is a way for members to just pop in, say hi, have any questions during the day. If they're working on any project, it's just faster for them to do it that way. They don't have to send an email and wait for a response. They can just pop in and get their answers, their questions answered. So that's all throughout the day. Here are some examples of projects that we work on during the day. So we work on newsletter meetings, PowerPoint design. We usually take some notes during our meetings, and then we send it to the members at home so they can type it and then send it back to our Slack community. Menu planning, and if you can see in this picture, there's Phil, one of our staff, and he's working with our member Naomi virtually, and they're working on a PowerPoint. That way she's able to collaborate and participate with members and staff that are on site. Yeah, so here we have examples of shared workshops and activities, and let me just explain this picture. So one of our culinary staff are conducting a cooking demo, and you know, there's definitely member participation on that. But another one of our staff, they're using Zoom to be able to share what's happening with the participants virtually, so that not only can members learn at our clubhouse, but also, you know, anywhere virtually they can participate. And what you may not see, that's a bit deeper, is we found a way to combat our distancing, you know, with COVID and everything. We've been limited significantly, and using this virtual services is not just a way of enhancing our community, but it's a way of creating more inclusivity, and that's kind of what a part of what we are, and a part of what we do as our clubhouse. As you go back to the different kinds of workshops, we have employment workshops on Fridays, and there's a different topic every week.
And we have a wellness program, which is different topics every week on Wednesday, and also a social planning committee as well.
So the question is, what about those members who do not have devices at home? So we can do that through a generous grant we received, and we are able to supply our members with 25 tablets and keyboards. Those have pre-installed software like PowerPoint, Excel, Word, or Slack, etc. And this is to meet a need for those who don't have access to that. It is a loan, so it's owned by the Academy, but we have an IT person here who is able to help. In the picture, you see Rima, one of our members, and she's super excited to receive her tablet. That way she can participate from home. And this tablet actually our management. So we are able to see their screen. That way we are able to assist her with any issues that she might have. And the IT person or members that are well known, they can help her with any issues that she might have. So it's really helpful that we can see her screen, and she has all the pre-installed apps that she needs to be able to participate here at the Clubhouse. And with that, we end our presentation, and we just want to pass it over to Mosaic Clubhouse. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, Idanes, and William. That was a really great presentation, and I loved your film. I really enjoy visiting other clubhouses, and I guess that doing it virtually is the way to go for a time. But it was brilliant to get some really concrete tips on how to run the virtual clubhouse with the building-based clubhouse side by side. I'm sure we've got loads of questions. Let's take some questions.
Thank you, Lee. For those that have a question that you would like to ask, please submit your questions in the Q&A panel located in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or by pressing the three-dot option along the bottom and selecting the Q&A panel. Your first question: what are your thoughts on creating intentional meeting for the virtual environment and not just having it as an ancillary side project?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's go straight to the Academy for that one, since you're already doing it. Can you share your experience with us?
So I'm going to pass it over to Idanes. It seems like all of our meetings are inclusive, on-site and virtual. We don't have a specific only on-site or only virtual because of our use of smart boards. But you want to?
Sure. So yeah, our meetings are available to everyone that's a member here, and even our volunteers can join. But it is exclusive to the people around our clubhouse. But all of the members, all of the meetings are available. Anything that we do is available to the members that are at home. We always find a way to, if it is a tablet, if we do something in our culinary team unit, we find a way to be able to share what we're doing in our dining room with everybody else that's at home.
Thank you. Your next question: do members seem excited about maintaining the hybrid clubhouse indefinitely?
Yeah. So for me, yeah, I'm very excited to see what's in store for the future, not just combating the COVID situation, but for the future of our clubhouse in general, to see what kind of how we can make available more kinds of meetings, and we're only going to have enough people in our building for so much time. If we could get a lot of people, it would be more beneficial to be able to utilize our best available options. Thanks,
Ian. Jamille, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that in terms of the good bits that you want to hold on to about the virtual clubhouse when we open the building?
Oh yeah, so what I want to say is it's good for some members who are technology and basically know a bit about technology, and they can do it from home. and also interact and be exclusive. But obviously there are members, as Chris mentioned, about not having technology or access to internet at home, and they can come into the Clubhouse and be part of the meeting. And I think for me, I know a bit. I had obviously learned about technology a bit more, but for me, it's be exciting to see where Mosaic can include technology virtually into their meetings as well. Not only because of this COVID-19, but they can step forward to the future of virtual lives as well as having the Clubhouse open.
Thank you very much, Jamille. I think it's really exciting, the potential which is offered by technology to make the Clubhouse much more inclusive. And I know that we're all grappling with the issue of those members who might not have the equipment or the skills. So I think there's heaps of potential there. Let's have another question.
What is your plan if you're at max capacity and you have more people showing up at your door?
Oh, that's a good one. Should we move to Chris? What's your plan in terms of capacity, Chris, and perhaps in terms of the ways in which you might prioritise some members?
Yeah, that is a really good question, and something that's been sort of engaging our sort of planning processes so far. I'm sort of really interested to hear from Academy that understand that in the guidelines they just sort of know the capacity, people turn up and they let them in. We've got to maintain our adherence to the standards in all this, of course, and we don't want to get into a situation where we have to turn people away. But as a bigger Clubhouse, I think one of the options we've considered is having a staggered work order day, where we perhaps try and do a bit of planning with members and organise attendance either in a morning session or in an afternoon session, so that we can operate throughout the work order day, but with different people. But then they've got to match that up with current recommended guidance, which is to minimise the numbers of different people using different workspaces. So that's another challenge that we've got to overcome. And we've also passed that over to units to work together to come up with a plan to see how they can best manage that. My original vision, as I said in my talk presentation, was that I had this idea in my head that actually we need to prioritise the people that have not necessarily engaged fully with the totally digital Clubhouse that we've been running. But I'm not sure that's going to be entirely possible. And I think listening to some of the work that colleagues in Academy have been doing, I think that we need to be much more flexible about recognising the value of both and recognising the importance of making sure that our activities and workshops and so on are available to people, whether they're at home or in the Clubhouse, both at the same time. And so, it's not a straight answer because we haven't got a straight answer yet. But today has given me a lot more to think about. There's a lot of issues in that one.
Thanks for that, Chris. Can we also go to Ian, Idanes, and William? You must have encountered this already.
Sure, and we talked about this idea when we were discussing our reopening guidelines. So before we opened, we thought that maybe we needed to schedule folks and set that up ahead of time. But then we realized only about a third of our members initially were probably going to be interested in coming back. So with our 20 workstations, we weren't going to be at capacity. So we decided to move that topic down into the future. And our plan is when it becomes an issue, that's going to be a real house meeting issue to figure out. And I think that's going to be a great conversation. How do we meet everyone's needs? How do we share the Clubhouse space for folks, realizing that maybe not everybody can attend every day as often as they want? But that's going to be a discussion that we have in our continual reevaluation of our guidelines. So right now it's not an issue, but we realize it will be. And we will be discussing things ahead of time so that we can come to consensus.
Thanks, William. I've often heard the phrase elastic as a description of clubhouse buildings, so maybe there's something there. Can we get the next question, please?
Is the culinary also delivering meals to members that are not able to come into the clubhouse even after it opens?
I think that's definitely one for the Academy.
We have not yet, but that's a great idea. We were delivering food and essentials during our closing to members that needed them. But we haven't initiated. We are offering to-goes if people come in, but that's something we have not yet explored. But we certainly have the capacity to do that. So thanks for the idea.
Thanks, William. Chris, I know that you've given this one a lot of thought, and in fact, we do actually have a kitchen for homeless people using our building during lockdown.
Yeah, that's right. We sort of offered up the use of our kitchen facilities for another organisation that was busy trying to provide meals for people that were street homeless, albeit they're in sort of housing hotels at the moment. And this is something that which we've thought about, and our cafe unit have given some thought to. It could be, for example, that in our planning we decide that we can only initially provide takeaway meals anyway, or we can only provide meals that we make up and then do deliver to members. There was a short period before we completely closed the building when we decided to have a quite restricted operation and recognised that the cafe was actually the heart and soul of the building, and where you know most of the kind of important bits of social interaction happened. And during that time, we were able to provide some of the more vulnerable members with meals and with food to take away. And we've still been able to do that to an extent with some of the surplus food that's been donated to the organisation that's using our kitchen at the moment. So the way that we're thinking at the moment is it's going to be a priority to try and focus on those most vulnerable members, perhaps those that have got the most difficulty in getting to shops, or even do lack food and have to use food banks regularly anyway. And that's a task for the cafe unit at Mosaic to develop further. But our initial thinking is that's going to be a priority.
Thanks, Chris. I know that in a previous webinar, Fontainhuset i Oslo discovered that their difficulty around social distancing in their cafe unit meant that they solely operated it as a delivery service rather than as a generally open unit. So it's a sticky issue for many clubhouses. Can we get the next question, please?
Sure, thank you. I will ask just quickly that, Chris, if you could re-engage your camera so that we can see you when you're answering questions. Your next question: how did you provide internet access for all of your members that you gave tablets to?
This is a really, really interesting question because obviously running a virtual clubhouse offers all sorts of opportunities, potentially also excluding people. It bears a huge cost. Can a clubhouse bear that cost itself? And it's a cost not just around equipment, but around actually upskilling members, the kind of time and the resources that takes. I'm sure that we've all put a lot of thought into this one. Can we go to William, Idanes, and Ian, first of all, on this one?
Sure. We obtained a grant for this, for those devices, and they have service included. It's pretty amazing service. We got it through Sprint, and it cost us approximately $6,000 for 25 tablets. That includes 6 months of service. So it's a really a nice deal, and not everybody's in the United States, but there's service providers out there that offer mobile device management, and it's quite economical, and it's just an amazing thing. So as we said, members that don't have the technical skills, we can see their screen and walk them through it. So maybe it comes back to funding and looking at funding sources that might be interested, but it wasn't terribly expensive. $6,000 or $7,000 for 25 tablets for 6 months of services, and we own those tablets now. So
Thanks, William. Oddly enough, earlier today, I was working with our local authority to help them put together a funding bid for Shell Petroleum, which is, it has a huge office which is based in this part of London, around resourcing clubhouses and other organisations with IT equipment and support for people to generally avoid isolation was their thinking. But I do think it's a massive question, this. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. And apologies for not starting my video, but hopefully that's back on now. Do apologise for that before. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and one that we've been not so much caught out on, but it's more complicated than it might first look, isn't it? Because we had instances in the early days of lockdown where there's organisations that were keen to provide people with laptops and get technology out to people, but we had a couple of instances of members that were really excited to take delivery of a laptop, but then found that they didn't actually have broadband and the internet at home, so they couldn't use it, which was kind of frustrating, and really emphasising the fact and rubbing in the fact that that they were kind of isolated and couldn't take part in things. So we've had to do this by partnerships, by some of the work that Lee's just described. We've got a great local organisation called Clear Community Web, who not only help individuals access good quality, reasonably priced pieces of equipment, but also give advice on best quality deals for broadband internet and so on, so that we can get people engaged with this. And in much the same way that colleagues at Academy were just describing, we've been looking at a whole range of other sources of funding so that we can get this. There's that sort of promising partnership which Lee described. There's also some sort of London-based banks that are interested in helping organisations like us kind of make sure that we are reducing isolation and getting members engaged as much as possible. There's a lot going on, and luckily we've got a new head of fundraising who's got a absolutely full workload at the moment trying to engage with all this stuff. But it's got to be done in a measured way and in a careful way, making sure that everybody that benefits has got all the bits of kit they need, including the hardware, the software, the actual internet access as well. So it's something that we're kind of busily engaging with, but it's a potentially complex issue.
Thanks, Chris. I was also having a conversation with Jamille about this last night, and Jamille described a really effective way of members supporting each other around IT, which obviously happens in the building all the time. But that looks like an amazing new development, that when we go back to our building, that members can actually support other members to develop those IT skills through Zoom or through mobile, whatever. I'm sure we can make it work, but it's a massive question and a really good one. Let's have another.
Why do you find Slack better for some tasks and Zoom better for others?
Okay, so we currently don't use Slack at Mosaic Clubhouse, so let's go straight to the Academy Glengarry.
So yeah, I'll just briefly address that question. So we have been using Slack for 3 years, and we primarily use it for messaging, news, and that sort of thing, and we've been using Zoom for more video conferencing.
Right, they're really two different services, and when a member gets enrolled in the last several years, we ask them to get on Slack, so that becomes our outreach, our messenger, and we post the meeting IDs for Zoom for all of our virtual and on-site meetings. We post them on Slack, and then they can access them access to Zoom meetings. So the Zoom are really used for video chats or for meetings, unit meetings, and things like that.
And if I can say something, we use Slack for absolutely anything, any activities that's happening here at the Academy. We use it as a way to communicate. It's a form of outreach, really. And a lot of people don't like to talk on the phone that much, and especially if it's just a quick message. Slack is perfect to just communicate with those members. Just a quick message, and they send you back, and it's a lot of fun. It's a community. It's very I can see a lot of members really enjoy it, and they can talk to each other at the same time. So it's just a great way for them to communicate with each other as well as with staff.
That sounds great. Thank you. Do we have another question?
Did Glengary have the smartboards before the pandemic? And if so, what is the cost range for a smartboard?
Good question. Yes, we did have the smartboards before. The smartboards a couple of years ago, they were approximately $8,000 to $10,000 each. They operate as a computer. They're internet connected and everything, so it's like a large computer screen. So $8,000 to $10,000 per smartboard.
Great. And can you speak to the process that you've used to guide the process of achieving consensus related to reopening?
Okay, Chris, you've had some experience of this with both the policy meeting last month and also with establishing a committee. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been very keen to make sure that we have got as near as possible consensus about the reopening. We split that into different sort of stages, really. First of all, at the beginning of the week, last week, we had an open access big Zoom meeting where all members and all staff were invited, and there's a very broad agenda just to sort of gather people's thoughts and ideas about how and when we might be able to reopen. This is at the time when our government had just announced that things were starting to kind of ease out of lockdown and put some dates around things like possible school reopenings and so on. So we thought it would be time to start planning. That generated a lot of really good ideas, and it also identified key members that were really interested in this and really keen to help. And the following day, I sort of visited the Clubhouse with a couple of members and with a staff colleague, and we did a walkthrough and our risk assessment together, and the input from the members in that was absolutely invaluable. The next stage is for us to have a more focused working group. That's going to meet on Friday for the first time, and that's made up of about 6 members of staff and about 7 members at the moment. But one of the actions we want to see from that is that each unit goes back and discusses amongst themselves about how they're going to make this work and how the whole thing is going to be put into place. And then if the working group meets again in a week's time, we can see that meets together. And then finally, I think it's going to be about having a special policy meeting or house meeting we can call to try and put all this together and make sure that everyone is happy and we've reached some kind of consensus about how we move forward. But it's been that kind of build up. But I do want that bit in the middle of each individual work unit to be very sort of actively engaged with the staff group and with members together, so that between them we can all work out how we're going to do this.
Thanks, Chris. I'm aware we're really short on time, but William, would you like to share with us the process by which you reached consensus around reopening?
Sure, I'll give you kind of the quick version. Our board of directors initiated the process. We're a freestanding clubhouse. So they asked us to consider reopening, and they asked us to move forward with developing guidelines that they would ultimately approve. So our process, we brought that back to the clubhouse community through Zoom meetings and to discuss possible guidelines. And again, that process was intense. There was a lot of strong feelings about different precautionary measures. So we took our time over about 10 days. We came up with written guidelines. We sent those back to our board of directors. There was some discussion back and forth, even with them, about certain details in those guidelines. And then they finally approved it, and we implemented those guidelines. It was the week before we decided on a Friday, and then we opened on Monday. So it was a very inclusive process. You know, when I think about it, some of the members who have decided not to come back yet were very vocal as far as giving input about what safety measures or what we should be doing on site or not doing, which is really interesting to me. You know, I know Ian participated in that process. How was it like for you to have your voice heard in that guideline process?
Yeah, for me it was great just to be able to give input, even not even being on the campus, but being part of meetings beforehand to give our input, because it's very important that that everyone's voice is heard, and that can't be possible without the use of our digital services.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have time for more questions?
We're going to go ahead and take one more question. So your last question today, do you see the hybrid clubhouse becoming the new norm of clubhouse operation, or do you see it lessening once the pandemic lessens or is resolved?
That's a really key question. Let's go back to Chris first of all.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, something I've been thinking about during the course of this webinar. I think what we might end up doing, if we're smart about this, is actually dropping the word hybrid from that conversation. What I can see is that we have a clubhouse, but what we've proved during lockdown is the clubhouses aren't about the building. The buildings have been closed for a bit. The communities haven't been closed. That's been the message. And what we're finding is that we can engage people in a whole range of different ways, whether it's digitally or whether as we get back into things in the building. That's going to be the normal. It's going to be the kind of a clubhouse operation which is less reliant on attendance at the building, and hopefully over time we can use what's best from all this, and then the word hybrid in that conversation becomes redundant. That would be my vision for this.
Thanks, Chris. And William, Idanes, and Ian, what thoughts do you have on the future of the hybrid clubhouse?
I want to ask Idanes to respond. She's really on the ground level of that. But I will say we had a discussion about attendance. How do we keep track of attendance? And we decided that if you're virtually or on site, we're going to keep track of your attendance. So our attendance keeps track of both, which means for us, both are valid. And my guess is we'll continue that type of attendance as a way of understanding the value we give to that. But what do you think about that question?
Yeah, I think that right now we're doing really well with the virtually and on-site. I think that it will continue and it will be a new norm. Even when all of this is over, I can see a lot of members are enjoying having the chance of one day coming into the clubhouse and then the other day being able to stay home. I know a lot of members one day are not feeling going to the clubhouse, so having that chance of joining while they're at home and just working on a project and seeing other faces, I think it'll definitely continue, and I think this is a good way for them to still be communicated to us. So, what I think.
Thanks for that. That's really interesting stuff, and it was really nice to hear you speak earlier about ensuring that the clubhouse remains as inclusive as possible. Well, that was a really brilliant presentation and discussion. I'd like to thank Ian, Idanes, and William from the Academy Glengarry, and also Chris and Jamille from Mosaic Clubhouse in London, and everybody else for joining us today. There's lots of food for thought, and I think, the thought it leaves me with is that clubhouses are once again proving the axiom that doing things differently leads to doing something exceptional. I hope you'll join us at the next webinar, which is at the same time next week. It's titled, What About Work? How can we maintain our focus on work and employment in the current environment? It will be hosted by Independence Center in St. Louis, Missouri, and it will include presentations from Fontenhuset Bærum in Norway, and also Fountain House Stockholm in Sweden. Thank you again for joining us today, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you all for joining. The recording will be available next week, and the slides will be distributed tomorrow. There will be a short on-screen survey once the event ends today. Please take a moment to fill it out and give us your feedback. Thank you for coming to the webinar. Please be on the lookout for announcements regarding our future webinars. Have a great day.